What's up, guys? Matt Brown here for thelines.com, playpicks.com, and we're going to have real sports happening this weekend. We have the UFC on tap, UFC 249, and I've been joined by Clifford. He's the host of MMA Tonight on Sirius XM's Fight Nation channel 156. You can find him on Twitter at Clifford MMA. RJ, thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
I am so excited we actually have a fight week here, Matt. If I start doing cartwheels mid-show, please forgive me.
Hey, actually, I think that will help the views, that will help the listens, that will help everything if you want to do cartwheels. I'm perfectly okay with that. I mean, look, we know that the UFC was trying to get this done earlier. We know they were trying to get some events. Look, me personally, my opinion aside, I think it was probably smart to wait until now when they did. I think it was a little forced when they were trying to do it a month ago. But here we are with a live event that's going to go down this Saturday here. Let's start on the undercard here. Let's just start with what I consider to be kind of the name brands. I think this is going to attract, with it being the only sporting event in town, I think this is going to attract a lot of the casuals to semi-casual fans here. So, you know, I think that they probably recognize the names Uriah Hall and Jacare Souza. Of course, Hall won 3 of his last 4. Jacare lost 3 of his last 4 here. As we kind of go into this one, we see that Jacare is a minus 125 favorite over Uriah Hall, coming back at plus 106. How do you see this thing breaking down?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot for Jacare Souza. He's flirted with retirement during this little losing streak of his, and so this might be a lose and I go home type of fight. He's semi-close to home, now working in South Florida at his gym there. So this is Jacare's type of fight where we've seen, like, this sort of stylistic matchup he's been through a million times, right? A dynamic striker in front of him, and of course, he's the rare world-class jiu-jitsu fighter that also has amazing wrestling, also a world-class athlete, which is the very, very rare breed for these guys. And of course, the striking's taken up some, has improved over the time. With Uriah Hall, it's always the same thing. Long lulling moments of little action, and then bam, he does something insane, right? Like, spinning back kick, knocked out Gegard Mousasi. There's the wheel kick, obviously his most famous kick in the Ultimate Fighter house. It's those long periods in between that really dragged down his career. And so Jacare's really gotten away from his wrestling over the last few years. I think it's probably because of his age, and wrestling tires people out so much. I'm leaning Uriah Hall here, mostly because I think just when you have one foot out of the door in retirement like Jacare Souza does, it kind of goes in your head a little bit. Jacare's getting away from his bread and butter more and more. Of course, Uriah Hall has many opportunities to implode, which he's done before. But I think if this fight stays at kickboxing range, Uriah Hall will eventually get a knockout.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we've seen this time and time again over the years that you and I kind of, OG's been around the sport a long time here. And anytime those guys start talking about retirement, anytime they start saying like, oh, well, this is definitely going to be my last fight, or this is my last 2 fights, you don't really see the same guy in the cage about 9 times out of 10. And so I definitely agree with you there. And especially getting plus money on Uriah Hall. Definitely like that spot here. Now, the fight that everybody is going to be looking at here, Cowboy Cerrone, Anthony Pettis, going to be on free TV. Cowboy now has lost his last 3 fights here. 3 very tough fights, we should say, in Ferguson, Gaethje, and Conor McGregor, but still on a 3-fight losing streak here. Anthony Pettis lost 3 of his last 4 as well, got subbed in January, as we know. As we kind of take a look at this one, how do you see these two going at it? Do you see, I mean, we know Cowboy, super proud dude, very proud of his legacy that he's left here in the UFC. Do you still expect just the balls to the wall Cowboy Cerrone style here, despite the fact that he's dropped 3 in a row?
Yeah, I mean, Cowboy doesn't really change how he fights based on opponent. He seems to change how he fights based on the spotlight. When he's in the really big title fights, main eventing pay-per-views and really big spotlights is when he's tending to fade. And when he's comfortable, when he's fighting, semi-close to home, or he has an opponent that doesn't really get into his head, like a Nate Diaz or something like that, he fights pretty well. Anthony Pettis has been basically the same fighter since he lost his title. Capable of knocking you out in dazzling fashion at all times, but he just doesn't win rounds. Like, I can't remember the last time he actually won a round. And so it's like he either gives you fireworks and leaves you laying on the canvas counting ceiling tiles, or you just slowly picking away at those rounds, and he doesn't get his hand raised based on a decision. So I like Pettis in this spot. This is obviously a rematch when Pettis knocked him out years ago, up a weight class. I just feel like I just feel like Pettis will eventually find his mark. He figured out Cowboy once. I think he can do it again. And 4 losses in a row for Cowboy would be devastating.
Do you think this one goes a distance, or do you see this one ending before we see the judges' scorecards?
So I always look back to when Cowboy Cerrone fought Nate Diaz, and someone that talks trash, knocked his cowboy hat off at the stare downs and just kind of gets into his head. Pettis isn't that kind of trash talker, like, roughing you up and getting in your face and getting in your mind like that. But what's even worse for getting in people's minds than trash talk is remembering that this guy knocked you out a few years ago. So I think that's going to be the X factor here. Is Cowboy knows what that's like, felt the power of Anthony Pettis, and I think he'll be apprehensive this time around too.
Anthony Pettis about a minus 140 favorite. Cowboy Cerrone coming back at plus 115-ish range, plus 118-ish range out there if you're looking to get down on that one. Now, going to the main card here, we know everybody's excited about the co-main and the main. So let's look at the other 3 fights on the main card. Which one of these 3 has your attention the most?
Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Francis Ngannou, for all the obvious reasons. 2 giant heavyweights, 2 brutal knockout artists, and this is essentially a number 1 contender fight at heavyweight after Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier finish up their trilogy. You've got the very experienced kickboxer in Jairzinho. He's got 80 professional kickboxing fights to his credit. You've got Francis Ngannou, who we all know has arguably the hardest punches in all of mixed martial arts right now. This comes down to, Jairzinho, I think, is the more polished technical kickboxer, certainly more experienced kickboxer, whereas Francis Ngannou has just this soul-crushing power that can turn any fight around. So it's a matter of, can Jairzinho make Francis Ngannou miss and either finish him, or can Francis Ngannou eventually find his mark like he always does?
Do you look at this and seeing Ngannou as, minus 278 favorite, so nearly a 3-1 favorite here. You're getting plus 225 on the underdog here. If you're looking at this from a betting standpoint, is Ngannou a nearly a 3-1 favorite in this fight in your eyes?
I think a lot of that has to do with name value. I think people know who Francis Ngannou is. He fought for the title. He's headlined, UFCs before. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, like I said, a very seasoned kickboxer. I don't think UFC fans are quite as familiar with him. You can't even pronounce his name. You just got to call him Biggie Boy just to be able to get people to remember who he is. I think that's part of it. And of course, the fight-altering knockouts are a legit equalizer. Right. That isn't just some rough and tumble stat. Like, that's a legit way to end any single fight. And Francis Ngannou can do that at any time. So, I think that's the Deontay Wilder phrase is perfect. He's like, to beat me, you have to be perfect for 12 rounds. For me to beat you, I only have to be perfect for 2 seconds. And that's what you're dealing with when you're fighting Francis Ngannou.
So we know everybody looking forward to these last 2 fights here, Henry Cejudo and Dominick Cruz. Now, Cejudo hasn't lost since December of 2016, and Cruz hasn't fought since December of 2016. So I'm sure a lot of people are, especially the casual fans who are coming back in, getting involved in the UFC this weekend after maybe have laid off for a while, but hey, it's going to be getting a lot of pay-per-view buys. People are coming back in. They're going to recognize Dominick Cruz, and then they're going to mention on the broadcast that, oh, by the way, Dominick Cruz hadn't fought in 3 years. How worried are you about Dominick Cruz having not fought in 3 years?
Well, it's interesting because obviously that's where a lot of the focus is, and that is a real issue. Like ring rust is real, but it's like, I always attribute ring rust. It's like addiction. Mm-hmm. It's real, but you can beat it mentally. Right. So that's what Dominick Cruz does. He just mentally beats down ring rust and says, if he just says it 1,000 times, he wishes it to not be a thing. It's not a thing, and he just makes it so that way. But the other part is, no one's really talking about this. Henry Cejudo's coming off almost a year-long layoff, and he had shoulder surgery. So Dominick Cruz is used to really, really long layoffs coming off of injury. Henry Cejudo isn't. So I'm not trying to diminish the how important that is, how big of a factor it is that Dominick Cruz has been out for that long. Plus, he's in his mid-30s now. I imagine it has to get harder and harder every single time he has major surgery, long layoff, and tries to come back. But this isn't like Henry Cejudo's coming in like a spring chicken. He's got some issues with him as well.
We look here, Cejudo minus 210 favorite, Dominick Cruz getting plus 175 on the comeback here as an underdog. You did mention, both of these guys, it's not like they've been super incredibly active here. One guy the 3 years, one guy the 1 year here. We know Dominick Cruz and how dominant he is when he is Dominick Cruz. Do you expect to see Dominick Cruz in that cage? And when I say that, you know what I mean.
That's all we've seen out of Dominick Cruz. One type of Dominick Cruz. Active, a lot of volume. He's an enigma that a lot of people can't figure out. He's a mathematical formula with 2 arms and 2 legs and 5-ounce gloves on. So we will see that. Now, the question is not how does Dominick Cruz change who he is and how does he evolve? It's what Henry Cejudo does to a change to Dominick Cruz. So while not everyone can just wrangle up an Olympic gold medalist wrestler to practice your wrestling, they're easier to find than other Dominick Cruzes. Like there's only one person who fights like Dom, and that's Dom. So to be able to replicate something like that and figure him out is tough. Henry Cejudo, as seasoned as a combat sports veteran as he is, right, as legit 2-division champion, incredible athlete, tons of grit, gold medalist as a 20-year-old, he just doesn't have that many rounds in mixed martial arts at a really high level. Like, certainly not compared to Dominick Cruz. So can he solve that Dominick Cruz formula over the course of 25 minutes is the question. Because it's kind of similar to the Anthony Pettis situation where Cruz will pick up rounds. Cruz will pick up rounds with his volume and his activity. Can Cejudo figure him out and stop him, or figure him out and take over, midway through these fights or early in these fights, to me is the big question.
Yeah, I lean Dominick Cruz here. 1, getting plus money on him, and 2, giving him the benefit of the doubt, right? I know what an incredibly hard worker he is. I know how much he studies the game here. And if I am getting benefit of the doubt, if I feel like I'm getting Dominick Cruz in that cage, yeah, probably not a finish or something like that. But if you're asking me, can he win 3 of the 5 rounds? I'm getting plus money on Dominick Cruz as well. I don't know. Can you talk me off of that?
Well, look, every Dominick Cruz fight, with the exception of 2, have been Dominick Cruz winning, or dominantly, or winning a decision that could have went either way, right? I mean, TJ Dillashaw to this day still swears he beat Dominick Cruz, and I think he might be right. Cody Garbrandt's really the only guy that's been able to truly embarrass Dominick Cruz and get a legit win over the guy. So, look, if you're getting almost 2-1 on Dominick Cruz, the odds are you're getting to the end of the fight with a coin flip anyway. So just pure numbers wise, if you're getting 2-1 on Dominick Cruz, it's almost always a smart bet.
And finally here, we're going to wrap things up with Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje. And this is the fight that everyone is excited about, but maybe not the one that everyone wanted to happen here. I mean, look, Tony Ferguson, we've been trying to make a fight with him and Khabib for so incredibly long. And now Tony Ferguson getting up there in age. And before we kind of start to break this down, I mean, how did you feel about this fight when it got made? Did you feel like there's at least a chance you might get robbed of that Ferguson Khabib fight? Because I mean, look, if Ferguson were to lose this thing, is there a path to that fight happening before, he's out of the picture? I don't know.
If you'd have asked me before they booked this fight, hey, RJ, put together the most exciting possible fight in a division between any 2 fighters in that division that's also high level, my answer might have been Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje. I mean, Justin Gaethje, you'd be hard to say he's the most exciting fighter in mixed martial arts right now. Tony Ferguson right there. But like you said, literally the only thing that can make this fight not everything we want and a 10 out of 10 is the fact it's not Tony Ferguson, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Ferguson versus Khabib, in my opinion, the winner crowns himself the best lightweight of all time and the number 1 pound for pound fighter on earth. And we're not getting it for multiple reasons for the 5th time. So yes, like this is as pure fireworks as you can get in a mixed martial arts contest, but you're right, it's not the fight. Right.
Tony Ferguson minus 185, Justin Gaethje coming in plus 156. And when you take a look at this, I mean, I think this is, no doubt, is the dominance and how incredible Tony Ferguson is in the cage, but I think this is a dangerous fight for him with Gaethje.
It's one of the worst stylistic matchups for him. Tony Ferguson, we've seen him drop in almost every single fight he's in, whether he's fighting a number 1 contender or like a semi-top 10 guy, he gets dropped. I mean, as brilliant as he is as a fighter, he's got defensive holes the size of Texas. And so when he's fighting, but he's also never fought anyone with the 1-punch knockout powers of Justin Gaethje. So Ferguson gets dropped in every fight, but he always comes back. He always finds a way to recover, and he turns the fight into his type of fight. Can he do that against Justin Gaethje? I mean, to me, this fight is a battle of 2 different forms of attrition. Justin Gaethje coming on a short camp, does he have the cardio to go 25 minutes with someone like Tony Ferguson? And 25 minutes with Tony Ferguson isn't like 25 minutes with anybody else. The way he scrambles, the way he moves, the pressure that he brings, it's not a normal 25 minutes of fighting. Will Justin Gaethje's cardio last longer than Tony Ferguson's chin? That's my question here. Can Justin Gaethje crack Tony Ferguson for good? Not just hurt him, not just send him stumbling, but do something no one else has ever done and put him away. Can he do that before his gas tank runs out.
Feet to the fire. How does this fight end?
I like Tony Ferguson. We haven't seen him get knocked out, so I'm going to assume that he won't get knocked out this time, and it's just a matter of time. That long range of his, that scrambling ability, his wrestling ability, that's something that can wear out anybody, let alone a Justin Gaethje who's coming off of a short notice fight. I mean, beautiful fight, tough stylistic matchup for Tony Ferguson, but I think Tony has more ways to win, and I'll bet on his chin to be able to last.
He is RJ Clifford. You can catch him on MMA Tonight on Sirius XM. That is channel 156, and catch him on Twitter as well at RJ Clifford MMA. RJ, thanks for taking the time. I know this is a busy week for you. You're back in business, man.
I know, right? I feel like it's like the first day of school all over again. I got new shoes on. I got my backpack all loaded up. I got my snack pack. I'm ready to go.
I don't blame you one bit. We'll all be looking forward to UFC 249, man. Thanks a lot.
You got it, Matt.